from behind the wheel of the new base model Porsche Macan. I am on a de-restricted section of Autobahn with the cruise control set at 210. It's great too because you wouldn't really expect it. You probably can't hear much road noise right now, or even much wind noise. That's pretty impressive, but then again, we've sort of come to expect that sort of thing now, haven't we? So how is such steady quiet accomplished? Well, we've got a few factors. For starters, man is this thing slick. Posting a drag coefficient of just 0.25, this thing is smoother through the air than even the Koenigsegg CCR was. That was a car that was built to take the speed record from the McLaren F1. Now, of course, being an EV with a smooth bottom, and of course the aid of modern tech like adaptive baffles that open and close the vents only as needed so that you don't get extra drag, it's an understandably smooth modern product. And then, of course, there is the way it's set up. Because man, is this thing smooth, and particularly at speed. Now, this is something that I have celebrated in recent Porsches, because the company's new dual-chamber suspension setup is really well controlled. This actually simplifies a little from previous generations where they actually had a tri-valve system. Now, with two valves, you basically get one that controls just the way the car rebounds up, and one that manages how it compresses down. What that means for you when you're driving is that the Porsche Macan EV is able to steady itself really well and really actively and independently at each corner. If you're doing sporty stuff, that means that it keeps the wheels really well planted for best traction. And when you're just cruising about, that allows it to manage those traction needs with a general emphasis on straightforward comfort. And comfort is really a headline here. This is the base model of the new Macan EV. This is not meant to be a super niche, super specialized, insane performer. Yes, it's quick, 335 horsepower, 415 pound-feet, but it's not actually that insane. The Hyundai Ioniq 5N that I was testing just recently puts out over 600 horsepower. Now, that is a specialist model with something to prove as well. This here Macan, though, in this new entry-level rear-drive single-motor simple spec, is content just to be that. And so what it's focused on instead now is efficiency, something which it achieves reasonably well. We don't have NRCan or EPA specs yet, but assuming that WLTP European specs are about 22% optimistic, this thing should hypothetically, from a 100 kilowatt hour battery, of which 95 are usable, put out about 525 kilometers range. WLTP figures for actual energy consumption range from 17 to 19.8. Converted using those same numbers, that puts us at around 20 to 24 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. That's pretty good. It's plenty competitive with the Hyundai Ioniq 5, which is a similar size, similar weight. So too, actually, is it comparable to the new Fiat 500e, which is tiny. It isn't the most impressive though, not least of all compared to Mercedes-Benz offerings now. They have really gone hard on efficiency, and in an era when the Mercedes products are kind of feeling kind of cheap and kind of tacky in a lot of other ways, good, because they need something to win on. That battery architecture, well, it's like Porsche's Taycan. It's an 800-volt system, capable of charging at up to 270 kilowatts off of a 350 kilowatt charger. Porsche says that you can do the 10 to 80% jump in 21 minutes in optimal conditions. Now, we aren't able to test charging on this first drive, but when we get these back home in Canada, we absolutely will be putting that to the measure. So then, impressively smooth, impressively comfortable, reasonably efficient, very quiet thanks to that dual pane glass all around. And then we get into the tech. This is a tech-forward Porsche, and with that, we get to enjoy the fruits of Porsche development money. And it hits you right in the face from right when you get on the road. This new head-up display is, I firmly believe, the best I have used yet. Porsche has leaned into augmented reality tech here. Now, this has been coming into cars for a little bit now. We've seen actually in the Hyundai Ioniq 5 again, the way it can put little floating blobs over cars in your vision to help indicate, without having to look down or away, exactly what it sees and how it's interpreting the world. This is really important, especially in a car like this that's getting even heavier into the driver assistance world. We've got adaptive cruise and lane keeping like you're used to, but by being able to communicate what it's interpreting that much more clearly and directly in your face, it establishes driver confidence even better than you're probably used to. Also great are the navigation displays if you're using the native infotainment navigation here. It's really nice. It's rather Mario Kart, in fact. You see these floating arrows over turns, and as you get closer to the stop point at an intersection or what have you, they get bigger as though they're getting closer. The illusion is really well executed. It's also, just at a basic nerdy level, kind of neat. You get this little speckly effect. It's a nice bit of design as well, but it follows the lane. It traces. Now, this is actually something that you get in a few flavors in Porsches now, because the brand's new Matrix LED lighting system, which is admittedly a costly option, but which we've tested on, for instance, the Panamera, is really quite impressive in the way that it will fill in contextually and cleverly exactly which bit of road you need illuminated. Driving back home in Toronto on Highway 401, I've been really impressed by the way this Matrix LED lighting system, even with a ton of traffic around, can actually start to make use of the high beams to just get that best bit of illumination. It's really neat to watch in action, particularly around curved ramps and in bending lanes as well. This Matrix system can fill in individual pixels of the road, in essence, depending on what's around. It won't blind other cars. It'll cut off at their tail light or mirror level. And by sticking to the lane, you just get an extra bright channel directly in front of you, directly where you're going, directly where you need the light. Now, of course, this means that you're not getting brights casting down into the ditch to look for animals in this context, but watching for debris in the road and so on is really well taken care of. And then you get into the stuff that's just plainly nice. We've got this curved instrument cluster here in front of us with pixels that fill out exactly the curved bezel. That's something that feels really nice after an era of squared off, just smacked in tablet feeling screens. It's a really good premium feel, as you should expect for this kind of money and from this badge. Of course, from this money and this badge, you get some silly gimmicks as well. My first eye roll here in the Macan EV, we don't need this redundant passenger screen. Passengers do not need these redundant controls. And it's just such a silly extra spend, particularly when the controls that you get mirrored in that display generally just aren't as good as what you'll get here in the center display. The center display itself now runs Android Automotive OS. This follows a lot of the industry now and means you get all sorts of different little app support and so on and so forth. It's smooth, it's steady, it's slick, it looks really good. Connectivity then, of course, is Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, depending on what you're using. As for utility, we've got the usual 1,400 some odd liters cargo capacity there in the back, and we also have an 88-liter frunk up front. That frunk is a slightly awkward space. Yes, you can throw some shopping bags in there if you wish. However, it isn't quite like the frunks that you might be used to in some other vehicles. While you can open it with a single button press, unlike the 911s where you have to do a manual little latch to finally release it, this thing does just open once. However, it's still a traditional latch to close, so you do have to bring it down and then palm it on the badge to actually shut it properly. It's not the most convenient, and it won't be the most pleasant once the car is dirty. Much like the back seats in a 911, it's there if you need it, but it's not something that you should necessarily be banking on using every day. So then, is this new rear drive base Macan EV the most exhilarating? Well, no, but it doesn't need to be. Driven through these Swabish hills this morning, it's been really quite enjoyable, and put in sport mode, this power is plenty adequate and plenty enjoyable. With that being said, this is the accessibly priced by Porsche EV standards entry-level model for its series. And as that, it executes really rather nicely. For Driving.ca, I'm Al Alder. For more EV news, reviews, previews, specs, tests, and all the rest, be sure to follow us online.